Righty, want to welcome everybody today. Beautiful, beautiful weather, allergies and flowers and sunshine. It's a good combo. So let's start by doing our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Jessica. So today for our invocation and inspirational words is Alicia Bay with Gilbert House.
Thank you, President Sue. Today I wanted to share a poem from Mother Teresa. She said, "Do it anyway. People are often unreasonable, irrational, and self-centered. Forgive them anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfish, ulterior motives. Be kind anyway. If you are successful, you will win some unfaithful friends and some genuine enemies. Succeed anyway. If you are honest and sincere, people may deceive you. Be honest and sincere anyway. What you spend years creating, others could destroy overnight. Create anyway. If you find serenity and happiness, some may be jealous. Be happy anyway. The good you do today will often be forgotten. Do good anyway. Give the best you have, and it will never be enough. Give your best anyway. In the final analysis, it is between you and God. It was never between you and them anyway."
Thank you. Words to live by, right? Thank you.
Jane, you're up. Very funny. Oh, she's back. Yay.
Okay, Cindy had a guess. Is she here? All right. Oh, there she is. Cindy, you said you had a guess?
I don't see my guest yet, but she is definitely attending. The program will be very important to her. It is Lisa Wood, and she is our strategic communications administrator for Salem Health.
Oh, very good. Okay, well, what we'll do is we will, if our guests are a little bit late, what we can just do is after the program, again, pop it in the chat.
And Lisa's here.
Oh,
sorry, I had to scroll.
Okay. All right. Well, welcome, Lisa. It's nice to have you.
Thank
And
you.
then if anybody else has a late guest, just let me know and we'll make introductions near the end of the meeting today. So I'll just keep watching the chat. So I didn't see any visiting Rotarians, so I'm going to start club announcements with Beth Rhodes.
Or Ryan Collier.
Or Ryan Collier.
I'm going to be the Beth Rhodes substitute today.
Okay.
She asked me to speak up. Madam President, President Sue, and fellow Rotarians, we have such amazing, generous Rotarians. Not only are we a club to get things done, but we're also a club that puts dollars where it counts in this awesome community. Just a couple short weeks ago, our Good Works fundraising request went out to Rotarians for matching dollars and to raise some great money for the things that we do. And in addition to the $25,000 of matching funds that were donated, we've already raised $17,000 towards that match in just 2 short weeks. That means wow. We only have $8,000 to go to reach that match, that $50,000 that's going to help us do all the great things that we do in our community and our world. So thank you again for those that have already contributed. Please, 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 if you haven't already, donate and be generous so we can reach that match. You have 2 more weeks to do it. June 15th is when we need to finish our fundraising drive. Just go, I'll post the link to the donate button for the Salem Rotary Foundation, and we're going to reach that $50,000. If we could do it by next week, Madam President, we should think of some special challenge that Ryan has to do if we can get it all by next Wednesday. What do you say?
Ooh, let's do it.
Okay.
Everybody put your heads together.
Shave your head.
Thank you. Shave my head, Cindy. Did we do that? We used to do that for scouts, didn't we? Or was that a pie in the face? I can't remember.
Pie in the face is always very entertaining here at the club. So, okay. We're open to any ideas, except maybe not shaving heads. So thank you, Ryan, for giving us an update, and thanks to everyone that's already taken advantage of supporting our good works. Alrighty, I don't see any other announcements. So with that, I'll hand it over to Larry Gray, and one more time, thank him for he and grandson Lane for running our meeting last week. So off to you, Larry, for bell ringers.
Thank you, President. I know your name, President Sue. It was great fun. Before I do bell ringers, I want to comment. I do not favor wasting pies, but I think there are other ways we can get back at Ryan for. No. Okay.
We use shaving cream at the club.
Pardon me?
We use shaving cream at the club.
Yeah. Okay, bell ringers for today. Brand new member, Elena Harvey. Elena, I hope you're on. Maybe Jessica Nissen can feature you. All right. Elena, brand new member, is ringing the bell to encourage you to register today for the Union Gospel Mission of Salem's Walk for Hope and Fun Run and ribbon cutting ceremony. On Saturday, July 17th at 9 a.m., run or walk the 5K or 10K course through Minto Brown and Riverfront Parks before witnessing the historic ribbon cutting at 10:30 a.m. We are inaugurating the new 300-bed, 57,000 square feet men's mission at 777 Commercial Street. Don't miss out on helping UGM take the next step toward changing the face of homelessness in our city. Register at the website that I've placed in the chat before July 9th. And that is for the event Saturday, July 17th at 9, and then again at 10:30. Ring the bell for Union Gospel Mission and the help they are bringing to members of our community. Thank you, Elena. All right, Cindy Lanasar. Jessica, if you would feature Cindy. Cindy, Government and Community Liaison with Salem Health. I got to move this document so I can see Cindy's face. I got to see her reaction. Government and Community Liaison with Salem Health. Cindy Lanasar would like to ring the bell for Dr. Farah Etzel. Is Farah Etzel on this call? I hope so. I don't.
Yes, she is. Well, appears to be muted. Yeah.
Okay, good. As part of Cindy's role, monthly, she facilitates different units. Okay. Farah, okay, you're being picked on, Farah. You don't need to say anything. As part of Cindy's role, monthly, she facilitates different units in the Salem health system to tell their story on KYKN. This includes supporting these units to highlight an area of health focus that they then write and create 30-second and 15-second health tips. Cindy then takes her work and creates the spot to be aired on the radio. June is highlighting women and children's services. Last Friday, Cindy was to record these messages and couldn't say a word of the message. Cindy got so tongue-tied and panicked, she called in the expert. The word neonatologists, that was the word. Cindy frantically texted Dr. Etzel and asked if she was free for a call of huge importance. Cindy received a yes and called immediately to explain her physical inability to say neonatologists. Yeah, thank you, Cindy, for the challenge. Dr. Farah was able to heal Cindy's tongue. To record the most difficult 30 seconds in the past 2 years of doing this work. and there are a lot of big words in the medical field. Please ring the bell for all the neonatologists and neonatal nurse practitioners who cover the needs of our mothers and babies 24/7 at Salem hospitals, Salem Health's hospitals and clinics, and a special shout out for Dr. Farah Etzel for her quick therapeutic support. Ring the bell for Farah Etzel and neonatology.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Cindy, for that challenge. Next we have, and while we go to the next bell ringer, if you have bell ringers, please speak up, or better yet, put it in the chat and I'll acknowledge you. For now, we have Lauren Gutierrez. Lauren, would you like to give us your bell ringer?
Yes, I would. I apologize for my tardiness. I'm Lauren Gutierrez with Salem Health. And I'm ringing the bell today for a wonderful woman who lost her battle with Alzheimer's this morning. Her name is Bernadine McGinnis, and she was my caretaker while my parents worked full-time from the time I was 5 weeks old until I was old enough to take care of myself. So I'm ringing the bell for her in memory of her today. Very special woman.
Thank you very much, Lauren. That's wonderful. Wonderful story. All right. Any other bell ringers? I'm looking in the chat. Help me out. There must be others.
Anything, Larry?
Pardon me?
I don't see anything yet.
All right. Well, our goal is 6 to 8 bell ringers per meeting. And as far as I know, we're more or less on time. Is that correct, Cindy? Or Sue?
Yep. Yes, it is correct.
I'm sure there are others out there with bell ringers. Oh, we're only going to charge $20 for the challenge of the that you want to present to Ryan if we meet that goal by next week. Come on.
I have one.
All
I
right.
have one. Well,
Yeah.
it's kind of just making it up on the fly, so it's not even written out. But I'm ringing the bell because Jim and I will be entertaining all summer long our daughter from Canada with her 2 little children. So if I seem a little bit crazed at any of the meetings or asking people to go out to lunch or do something, it's because of that. So I'm ringing the bell.
Ring the bell.
Larry, this is Ozzy. How many have you had?
I can't 5, 6. We'll call it 5.
All right, I'll ring 3 and I don't know what they're for. So I'll ring it 3 times.
Hey, Larry, Russ here.
Russ, please.
I'm going to ring the bell for Ken Van Osdal today. It was through Ken's extra effort and keeping all the ducks in a row. He maintained an adequate communication with the Murdoch Family Trust. And last night I saw our $400,000 check.
Yay! That's exciting. And that tells you that's a top off check, right? Russ, that's telling you that we've raised our money and obviously collecting it, but raised all our money, met our goal. And
Well, I think Tim has some more to add to that, but there's some still coming in.
oh, that's what I mean. But our commitments are such that Murdoch says that you can have the dollars as the top off to finish up the fundraising. So that's exciting.
I'd like to raise the bell.
Ring the bell?
Ring the bell.
Lauren, I
Yeah,
can.
hey, I'd like to-
Heavy.
I'd like to ring the bell for the researchers who've come up with the vaccines, because now I find that I can go places and do things that I couldn't have done a year ago at this point. It's nice to be able to go out into a store or my own office building and not have a mask on my face. So I want to thank the researchers, the doctors and scientists that produce the vaccines that it's going to get us out of this pandemic.
Thank you, Warren. Any other bell ringers? Thank you all very much for your generosity, and especially Ozzy. Back to you, President Sue.
Okay. Thanks so much, Larry. Thank you, everyone, for your generosity and sharing out. So we are at that time. Oh, wait, my guest is here. So I'd like to introduce my guest, and then if anybody else had a late guest that's arrived, please let me know. So I would like to introduce to you Matt Boulay. He is the new Executive Director of Salem Art Association. And Matt, I'm not sure who connected us all of a sudden, but it's been a pleasure chatting with him, and there he is. Chatting with him and hopefully get to do some scheming and ideas to work together here down the road. So welcome, Matt. Really appreciate you being here with us today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You betcha. Okay. So unless there are any other late arrivals, Allison Kelly is program chair. I'm going to hand it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you, President Sue. And fellow Rotarians, it's an honor to be serving as your program chair today. And before I introduce our speaker, I would like to introduce our head table. First of all, I chose two of my favorite people in the world who I've actually known for over 30 years. And those include John McCulley, who worked in public policy advocacy or lobbying for many, many years and is now retired. John and I actually met in 1988 when we moved to Salem, and our oldest daughters were both in kindergarten together. So I know you'll make John feel welcome. Sorry about the allergies, John. And also Ozzie Rose, who has worked tirelessly for many decades doing public policy advocacy or lobbying on behalf of educational interests, and retired in 2003, but is still serving as a contract lobbyist. And our families went to the same church when our kids were growing up, and Ozzie's always been incredibly inspiring and intimidating. So Ozzie, thank you for being at the head table. My next two guests for being at the head table are Red Badgers, and the two people that I have had the honor of recently introducing to membership here. So first we have Vincenzo Maduri, the owner of Enlightened Theatrics, who is also serving as a Liberty House board member. I also have known your Maduri family for many years, and Vincenzo graduated from high school with one of our daughters. And so awesome to have you here and sitting at the head table, Vincenzo. And also Jonathan Partridge. Jonathan serves as the Director of Community Engagement and Development at Liberty House. And both of them are technically Red Badgers. And so this will check off a requirement for you too. So with that, let's turn to our guest today, and a big shout out to President-elect Chain, Chain, you and I go back a ways as well. We met each other way back in the year 2000 when I was doing strategic planning for your agency. And Chain was instrumental in arranging for our guest to be here today. And so with that, let's turn to Josh. Josh Lehner is an economist with the State of Oregon's Office of Economic Analysis. He develops the quarterly Oregon economic forecast, including outlooks for employment, income, and housing. He also acts as the state's de facto vice economist by forecasting revenues for the Oregon Lottery, Oregon Judicial Department, state marijuana and tobacco taxes. Outside of work, Josh enjoys spending time with his wife and kids and traveling the state and consuming Oregon's craft beverages. That was a very diplomatic way of describing that hobby, Josh. Josh holds a BA in economics from the University of Colorado and an MS in economics from Portland State Universit. So please help me in welcoming our guest today, Josh. We're really looking forward to your presentation today.
Great. Thanks, Allison. It's great to be here with the group, and looking forward to the conversation. What I've done today is bring with us our latest, as quick as we can do, summary of our office's latest economic and revenue forecast. And what we do in our office is we do the economic and revenue forecasting for the state. We just released our latest forecast 2 weeks ago today. And this is the most important one we do every 2 years, the May of an odd year, odd numbered year. Every year is odd in its own way. And it is this forecast sets the revenue bar for the legislature as they're putting the finishing touches in the next month on the upcoming 2021-2023 state budget, the biennial budget. This is the last revenue forecast we give, so it sets the bar, more importantly, for everyone else. This also means it sets the bar for the kicker calculation. The way the kicker works is not that you overpaid your taxes. The way the kicker works is I underestimated revenues. 2 years ago. And so over the course of the 2-year biennium, if the revenues come in above that forecast made from 2.5 years ago, then the excess money of the money above forecast is returned to taxpayers as a credit on your check or on your tax return when you file the following April. So right now we are expecting a large kicker, not the largest we've ever done, but a large kicker based on the current 1921 biennium when you file your taxes next April. And I'll talk about that a little bit at the end. But first, I want to start with the good news. Right? Overall, this is all good news. Given we just went through a global pandemic that's not officially over yet, we went through a massive recession. Big shock to the economy last March and April. But since really at every turning point, thankfully, the economy has proved more resilient and the growth has been stronger than anticipated. So instead of this really massive recession, we just got a really large recession that's improving faster than anticipated, which is overall good news. And so just start off with the first chart. This is inflation adjusted GDP at the U.S. level. So this is output. So this is how many goods are we making, how many services are we providing to consumers in the economy. And so the thing you pay attention to is that first dark blue bar on the right, 2021 real GDP growth for the U.S. economy, somewhere in the 6 to 7% range is where the economic consensus is today. This is growth we haven't seen in decades. You have to go back to 1984's Morning in America to see a number this big. This is just, we're not used to this type of growth for a variety of reasons in recent decades. You have to go back generations to find this type of growth on a consistent basis. So this year, exceptional growth. Next year, very strong growth. After that, it slows back down to around trend because we're back to full employment. We're back to the productive capacity of the economy, and we're going to kind of grow along with productivity, business investment, labor force dynamics, all that sort of stuff. That's going to kind of be the pace of growth we'll get when you're at a full employment economy. And so we're expected to get back there pretty quickly. The main reason for this, I have to say, is due to federal policy. We had about a 10% hole in the economy, right? So a year ago when we shut everything down and we tried to social distance and all that, about a 10% hole, which is just astronomical. But then we took that 10% hole and we filled it with 25% of GDP's worth of federal policy between the CARES Act, the COVID relief bill, and then the American Rescue Plan Act, the three major pieces of federal legislation in the last 15 months. That is about 25% of GDP. So we had a 10% hole and we filled it with 25% worth of federal funding. And so therefore, the outlook is so bright because we more than filled the hole, which is the first time we've ever done this really in quite some time. This is the largest federal increase in spending, certainly outside of wartime, we've seen since the New Deal, right? So between those three major federal policy, the reason the outlook is so bright in particular is because a lot of this was just direct cash assistance to homeowners or taxpayers, excuse me. And so the way you read this chart is we're looking at total income in Oregon. You start at 0 on the left. This is how much total income, or you can think of it as average income in the economy. And then as you work your way to the right, this is how income changes over the business cycle. Right now, we're at that second peak, that second mountain peak in the red line, first quarter of this year, so March, when that third and presumably final round of recovery rebates went out, the $1,400 per person to top it up to get the $2,000 per person. That went to about 95% of Oregonians. 5% of us, didn't, 5% Oregonians earned too much money to qualify for it, but 95% of us got it. And so at that point in time, incomes are 20% higher today than they were at the start of the pandemic. So despite the job loss, despite all the restrictions in place and the stuff we couldn't do and this pain of online schooling if you have small kids and all that sort of stuff, despite all of that, incomes were up 20%. And that is the reason why the outlook is so bright, is because there's a massive economic shock that's not done yet. We're in the recovery phase, but the income side of the ledger is as good as we've ever seen. And so some of this is temporary, right? The money's going to be gone. It's only a one-time boost with these recovery rebates, but overall, on average, things are looking up because of the federal aid. The key question is whether people would spend it, and the answer is yes. I'll talk more about that at the end when we talk about lottery as well. And so you put this all together, right? So we have a lot of federal programs, we have a lot of income, we have cabin fever that is very real. People are just itching to get back out there on the road and get on vacations and get their hair cut. My wife's been cutting my hair. I still haven't sat down in a barber chair, in a long time. I'm doing it this week, so I'm excited. And so like we're just getting back out there and we're spending the money. And so what we did in our March forecast 3 months ago and kept it this time is we front loaded the growth. So this is the same style of chart where you start at 0 on the left. This is how many jobs there were in Oregon at the peak of a business cycle. And then as you drop down is the severity of the recession. As you work your way back up, that's the recovery phase. As you hit 0 and get above it again, you're at a historic all-time high for employment. The red line looks nothing like past business cycles. It's a deeper cycle, but it's a shorter, faster, quicker recovery timeline for all the reasons I was mentioning on the federal policy side and the income and consumer spending. Well, we front loaded the growth because what we're doing as consumers in the economy is we're getting back into what we call in-person consumer services. So that's your hotels, your restaurants, your nail salons and the like for the most part. And these are all very labor intensive. So this shift in spending out of just buying stuff on Amazon and getting it delivered to your door or going to Home Depot and paying $60 for a sheet of plywood to fix your deck, right? And I guess the plywood's not for the deck, it's for your chicken coop. But, so we're getting back into these in-person services. It's very labor intensive, very pro jobs. So that's why we front loaded the growth, because the income is there, the consumer spending is there. All of these firms that have just been hammered in the past year really need to staff up as quickly as possible to accommodate this demand. So we front loaded that growth. The next 6 to 9 months should be, basically the strongest growth we've ever seen. Just because we're trying to get back to where we were, and the consumers are certainly there, and the consumers are trying to get there. The key question is whether the economy can grow as fast as whether the supply side of the economy can grow as fast as the demand side of the economy. And that's really the linchpin and the unknown today. And we're already hitting some supply constraints, right? So here we're looking at some various supply constraints on the economy. What do supply constraints mean? These are things that restrict growth. You're still growing, but you're growing at a slower pace because you have to overcome some of these hurdles and these barriers. And there's a number of them that we've already bumping into today in terms of raw materials, and the drought's only going to worsen it when it comes to cattle, and it comes to alfalfa and maybe the corn and the wheat and stuff like that. And so we're going to run raw materials are a problem, production capacity. We're bumping up against a lot of our productive capacity in the manufacturing sector when it comes to food manufacturing, when it comes to semiconductors, when it comes to lumber and some of these other sectors, right? To get higher output, the consumer demand is there, but to get actual higher output for sales, you have to either invest in new plants, new equipment, or hire an extra shift, right? Add a shift to the mills to get them running at a fuller capacity throughout the 24 hours in the day. And that takes time, takes money. You have to be confident that the demand will last to make these big long-term investments. And so that's slowing growth. Absent some of these, we would be selling more cars, we'd be selling more computers, we'd be building more homes, if not for some of these capacity constraints on the manufacturing side of the economy. And then, of course, labor. Labor is the one people really want to talk about the most. And I think it's probably the biggest piece to the puzzle right now for why we might see slower growth than anticipated this year. We'll still see really good growth, just maybe not quite as exceptional as anticipated because we're running into some of these supply constraints. As I say, the labor is the biggest piece. And right now, there's a lot of people that aren't looking for work who maybe in past years would have been looking for work. And I think the strong household finances is the biggest one here. We have a lot of other stuff going on. We have fear of the virus. Why would you want to go back in and wait tables and be the mask police and tell people to put their masks back on for low pay and inconsistent hours and the like, right? There's a lot of things that go into some of these jobs. And I think there's certainly fear of contracting a contagious, deadly disease, certainly in the past year, not disease, virus, in the past year that would go into not wanting to work if you don't have to. We have childcare issues, certainly, with distance learning. And even though we're kind of back in the classrooms, the couple hours a day, twice a week, that ain't it. That's not that helpful for working parents and the like. So those things are very real. But I think the household incomes being up 20% is probably the biggest piece to the puzzle for why, people don't have to go back today to work. They're not forced financially to take any job to put food on the table because we've had that direct federal aid, which was the whole point of the policy, right? Including the enhanced unemployment insurance benefits, which is the chart on the left. People only want to talk about labor as a constraint on the economy, and they only want to talk about the UI enhancement as the only type of constraint in the economy. I think it's real. I think it is not necessarily a problem, but it's certainly something going on we have to acknowledge. But right now, the average Oregonian receiving unemployment insurance benefits is getting 100% wage replacement. They're getting about 60% of that from the regular UI program, the state program, and then you add on the $300 a week federal plus up or the enhancement, and you're getting 100% wage replacement for the average worker. And so this right there, right? If you don't want to go into work or you can't because of the childcare or whatever it is, you don't financially have to. At least for the next couple of months. To the extent that this is the problem, the combination of the virus, the combination of the lack of in-person schooling, the combination of the enhanced UI benefits, these are all very temporary. They're gone in a couple of months. Kids are going to back in the classroom this fall. The $300 a week is gone. The first week of September, Labor Day is gone. And so to the extent that these are the constraints on the economy, on the labor market side of things, they'll work themselves out in the next couple of months. Now, between now and then, expect to hear more conversations about it's harder to find workers. We're already seeing a lot of that in the last couple of months, and that will continue throughout the summer and certainly for the time being. Now, I think it's important to keep in mind that once all of these pandemic circumstances subside, what we're going to be left with is a tight labor market. And nobody said it was easy to find workers in 2018 or 2019. And that's what we're going to be back at later this year or certainly next year. And so finding labor for firms looking to expand and hire today, it's not going to get easier. Even this fall, it might get a little easier for October, but that's about it. And then we're going to be right back. And so attracting and retaining workforce is going to be a substantial challenge for firms today, tomorrow, next year, and certainly over the next 5 years as we see more and more baby boomers officially enter into retirement. And we're only maybe a quarter of the way through baby boomers retiring, and that's going to be a demographic impact on the labor market for really the next decade. So that's something else to keep in mind. So we have all this federal policy. We have strong demand in the economy. We have supply constraints. Isn't this all just going to result in a massive burst of inflation? And the answer is maybe, right? It could. That's the risk. That's another risk to the outlook. Right now, we know a lot of the inflationary pressures are temporary. They're transitory. They're one-time levels up when it comes to the prices of goods and services. A lot of the stronger headline numbers we're going to see in recent months and certainly over the next 3 months when it comes to these monthly inflation reports that'll trickle out at the federal level is reopening, right? What's driving it are the cost for car rentals, cost for hotel rooms, food and energy, oil prices have gone back up, right? Some of these things that are tied to the stronger economy and the reopening economy are going to push these inflation numbers higher, at least for the next handful of months. And then after that, the key question is whether they're going to continue to push up inflation at a higher than anticipated level. Not just this year, we know that's going to happen, but next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. That persistent nature of higher inflation is what the Federal Reserve cares about. The one-time level shift up that we're going to see this summer, Federal Reserve is not worried about that. And in fact, that we've been below inflation target for the last decade, really. We're 3 or 4 percentage points accumulated over the last expansion below the Federal Reserve's target for the inflation, means that there's a lot of room to go before they start to become worried at all. And then they really care about whether it's persistent or just a temporary one-time thing. That's going to be the key to federal policy. But I do think clearly when we come off of a decade of very, very, very low inflation, the risks are primarily to the upside, especially when we take a 10% hole in the economy and we fill it with 25% worth of policy. I think the risks are tilted to the upside, but exactly how strong, it's hard to tell right now. We're only a couple months into this thing, and it'll be a challenge to get a handle on it, but we're not there yet. Okay, so that's on the economic side of things. The stronger economy has basically translated more than one-for-one into the budget side of things. Here we're looking at income tax withholdings. So primarily this is the withholdings out of your paycheck. that, every time you get paid, there's the withholding component. That's what this is. There's other things in here too. So stock options are in there, bonuses are in there, retirements, some retirements accounts do the automatic withholding for you. That's in there, but it's primarily wages and salaries, but there's more than it than just that. They're growing at double digits right now. And of course, the year-over-year comparisons are a lot easier today because we are in the shutdown phase a year ago. So those numbers are a little inflated, but outside of a brief temporary slowdown in withholdings, wages and salaries have been booming. On the jobs front, we still have 6 or 7% fewer jobs in the economy today than we did, at the start of the pandemic, a couple slides ago, but total aggregate wages are back up. They're up about 4%. So that's about a 10% gap, right? So the people who tend to have lost their jobs, frankly, are some of our neighbors and family and friends that are in some of the lower paying service industries. Those are the jobs that were lost. The higher wage jobs, and given the income distribution in our country, the higher income folks account for such an outsized share of wages and certainly total income than do our lower wage neighbors. That overall total aggregate wages are much higher today than they were at the start of the pandemic, despite the large jobs hole that remains. We're seeing that translate into these tax revenues. So they're booming. It's not just the labor market and not just the direct wages. We look at the non-wage income. So we're talking about corporate taxes on the left, capital gains, investment related income on the right. They're both at record levels. Not only did we see corporations, maintain their really high corporate profits during the recession, we've seen the taxes actually increase, take another step up since the pandemic started. And so this has really boosted state revenues and the capital gains and the asset markets. Yeah, we had a little bit of a stock correction, in March of 2020, but then that was about it. And then we're at all-time highs again today. And then housing wealth feeds in here too, especially for the people that are working within the real estate industry. If they're flipping homes, not necessarily, if they're making investments in homes and reselling them at a higher profit, that's showing up in the capital gains receipts as well. And this makes us a little bit uncomfortable, right? The asset markets and the corporate profits are at such high levels that, if you look at history, they tend to come down after that for a brief period of time. Doesn't mean you have to have a recession. It just means that profits will tend to slow or they'll come down a little bit. They'll come back to earth. But it's really hard to put that in the forecast, because if you say February 8th of 2022 is when the stock market is going to correct, that you can't forecast like that. That makes an even larger forecast error, because you're trying to time a cycle versus trying to figure out exactly where that longer run trend would be over a multi-year period. And so owning up to the fact that we have really strong corporate revenues and profits, and we have a record-setting asset markets, that also boosts our forecast, because it translates into more taxable income for Oregon businesses and Oregon households. But this would be a risk to the downside. This is more of a risk to the downside for the forecast, that if we do see some sort of stock market correction or a reduction in corporate profits. Now, if we get the reduction in corporate profits because they're investing more in plants and equipment, that's good news for the economy. It's going to hurt this particular revenue stream that's based upon profits, but that's okay, because it'll be better news for the overall economy. Finally, on the revenue side, right, I mentioned the lottery up front. And so normally we kind of take our economic outlook, demographics, income, spending patterns, and we use that to inform our lottery sales forecast. Well, this time we've been using the lottery numbers to inform the overall macroeconomic environment, because it's about hesitancy, right? We knew people had income, but would they be willing to spend? And the answer unequivocally is yes. And heck yes at that. If we look at video lottery sales and think about it, like, this is been a previously restricted activity. It's in closed indoor environments, in close quarters with other people. It's a discretionary form of spending, right? It's not food, it's not rent, it's entertainment dollars. And so, they have been through the roof. And the last couple of months have been record-setting video lottery months for the state of Oregon. Same goes for locally. The chart here is we're kind of looking at trends in sales statewide and in the Salem region. So that's Marion plus Polk counties combined, although it's almost all in Marion. There's very little in Polk when it comes to lottery spending, but we're up 30%. where we were pre-pandemic. So it's massive numbers, in part because people have cabin fever and the pent up demand to get back out there, and other entertainment options are limited. You couldn't go to Blazers games until what, this last week? You couldn't go to Timbers matches, or you couldn't, weren't getting on an airplane to go somewhere else. And so there's other very limited forms of entertainment. One of the things that would open periodically would be some indoor activities like gaming. And I assume Spirit Mountain's numbers look very, very similar as well. But overall, there's no long-term impacts in the economy. This is a confusing table of numbers. It's showing the numbers for our current forecast relative to our previous forecast 3 months ago. They're up a big amount. They're up $1 to $2 billion each biennium. This basically means that we've more than plugged the hole from what we thought would happen at the start of the pandemic. Available state resources are larger today than what we thought they would be even pre-pandemic. We more than plugged the hole. And then on top of that, we're getting additional ARPA funding, America Rescue Plan money for state and local governments on top of this, which the state's getting roughly $2.6 billion, and the cities and the counties are getting $2 billion between them. So there's a lot of available revenues. Now, of course, the needs are there too, but on the revenue side of the ledger, public budgets haven't been this flush in a while, and certainly much, much better than feared a year ago. And finally, I said I'd talk about the kicker. Because this is the one thing people probably know about our office, or at least they know about the kicker. They don't necessarily know it's my fault. Is we pay it out the same way we take the money in, right? So when I mentioned earlier about the income distribution in our country, the higher income households have the income, they pay the bulk of the taxes, and therefore they get the bulk of the kicker credit when they file their taxes, because we pay it out as a flat share. So it's expected to be about 13.6% next April when you file. But so that means for our lower income neighbors and family and friends, they're going to get $25. Our higher income neighbors and friends are going to get, 5 digits worth of a kicker credit on their tax return. It's the same percentage because it's just about the income distribution and the earned income and the like. So that can be something that people aren't always aware of, is that is certainly when we talk about averages or medians and the impact of this, it's certainly different, and it's based upon the income distribution that we see locally and across the country. But overall, bring good news. The outlook is quite strong. The key question is whether we can actually grow as fast as we anticipate, or we're going to ratchet back that growth for some of those supply constraints. And if we do, that likely means this year might be a little weaker than anticipated, still really good growth, just maybe not exceptional growth. And then that means next year will be stronger than anticipated, right? So I think we'll get all of that growth this cycle, just maybe this year's a little less than anticipated, next year's a little more than anticipated. I think that could be one way this plays out. Here's my contact information. I'm always happy to chat. Send me an email, give me a call, send me a text. If you're interested in the research we've done, you can follow along online. We got a blog where we post once or twice a week. We got a Twitter account where we're doing stuff more frequently. Just little nuggets of information like I pieced together here for you today. And with that, I'm out of time, and that's all I had prepared. I think there's a few minutes for question and answers.
Yes, absolutely. Josh, this is Sue. Appreciate it very, very much. We will give folks a moment that either raise your hand and we'll watch or drop a note in the chat that you have a question for Josh.
President Sue, while people are coming up with their questions, just a point of curiosity. This is Chain. What's the significance of Bigfoot on your slide deck?
I was wondering that too.
Well, I just think it's fascinating, but no. So if you when you get a wrong web address, the whatever 404 error URL is wrong on state government websites, it actually shows up. Bigfoot shows up. So that's I stumbled upon it one time. I just said that's our office's logo, and it's been around. It's been around for so long. People don't tell me no anymore.
Love it. So Allison, you have a question for Josh?
I do. And first of all, just to say thank you, Josh. It was a great presentation. And, everybody uses the state revenue forecast. A lot of us are paying attention to it. So it's much appreciated, and the timing is perfect. I have a question that may be a dumb question, but the bottom line is that if I'm wondering it, maybe other people, maybe there's one other person who is too. It's not specifically related to the meat of your presentation, but some of the material that you introduced early when you were answering the question, why are we doing so well? And it was because of the federal investment, the American Recovery Act, the COVID Relief Act. So just out of plain old curiosity, because I didn't study a lot of economics when I was studying political science, when the government decided to fork over these billions of dollars, where did that money come from? Was that from bond sales or debt financing? And will we then end up having to pay for that, later as taxpayers?
There's the mute button. Yes, definitely debt financed. So the national debt is going up according to that. Now, there's a couple different things to keep in mind. One is, what is the overall borrowing capacity of a advanced country, a first world country, if you will, in the older parlance? We don't know where that ceiling is. You know, if you look at Japan's national debt is 200% of GDP. Ours is only 100%, which is record setting for us, but it's a lot lower than some other places like Japan. And really the consensus of the academic research is that if you have your own currency, if you have an independent monetary policy, the Federal Reserve, we do, and a stable democracy, we still do, then you're going to be okay. Now it's when some of those different things start going haywire, then you start to run into trouble. And so therefore we're not there yet, certainly not there yet. And so I think the overall, and if you look at the actual, and the record low interest rates too, right? So if you look at actually what share of the federal budget goes to paying off the national debt each and every year, we're at very, very historically low amounts. I think it's only like 2 or 3% of the budget. So able, just like you can finance a larger home at a 3% mortgage rate than you can at a 4 or 5% mortgage rate, the actual payments we're making on our debt are very, very low from a historical perspective. So we have the fiscal room to do it. The key, I think, would be making sure we spend it on things that are useful and productive, and not necessarily just, blowing it on candy.
Okay, and then there is a question in the chat for you, Josh, after the Bigfoot question, and then I have a question for you after that. Do you see it?
I do. I see it. We've already seen labor force participation rates for teenagers really increase in the last 6 months, right? So if 20 and 30 and 40-year-olds are working a little bit less today, and they are just a percentage point or two, not massive numbers, although they add up. Teenagers are certainly willing to come in and say, I can work part-time for $18 an hour. It's a great job, so we've seen that. And so that summer, I think in the summer, we will get more teenagers. And so that'll help ease some of the leisure and hospitality pain. But again, that's also just a temporary thing too.
Mm-hmm. And this is Sue, Josh, my question is kind of aligned with that. So I work for the local Boys and Girls Clubs, and vast majority of our positions are entry level. So we've got a lot of college students that work for us. And with all the different benefits that folks are receiving, and you were talking about this, it's just really hard for many of us to bring on employees. There's restaurants downtown that we hear that are still closed because they can't get folks hired. Where do you see that tail that trend start to decrease, that folks are starting to get, when folks are starting to become more interested in finding a job?
Well, to the extent that it is related to the unemployment insurance benefits, then September, October for sure, right? If that is the key constraint on the labor supply, I think it's broader than that. And I think, but I don't want to say too much because we don't have enough data to really support this. It does seem like we're in the early stages of a reckoning for pay in the bottom 2 rungs of the economy. And by that, I mean like anything less than $25 an hour. We're seeing issues hiring people, right? So leisure and hospitality, in Central Oregon's up to $18 an hour, right? There's no job advertising, no one's hiring for less than that because of that. In the Valley, certainly seeing $15, $16 an hour becoming a whole lot more common. it doesn't matter what sector you're in, right? That this is just what's out there. And so those pay go up. And if, the median wage for manufacturing workers, like production workers, which are the manufacturing jobs that actually do the manufacturing, they're on the floor running the machines, that's $19 an hour. So if you can work in fast food and make $16 an hour, but now you're doing harder manual labor at 19, that I think we're going to see a broader increase in wages across the entire spectrum on basically the bottom 40% of the wage distribution is, I think we're starting to see that. It's a little bit speculative. But so it doesn't matter, entry level for Boys and Girls Club, you're going to be in the same boat,
Right.
Substitute teachers, education assistants for the districts and all that sort of stuff, right? I think we're going to see these wages increase noticeably. So it's going to which means it's budget pressure for the organizations, good news for the workers, good news for the economy, but it does make it harder to budget.
Right. Thank you. Farah, you had a question.
Yeah. So as we have more boomers retire and hopefully we uptrain more of our workers, where do you see the role of legal immigration to help kind of backfill the workforce? I know that's happened in the past when we've had major economic surges. We have to bring in more people to do work.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a little harder to parse for Oregon specifically because we're not a port of entry to the United States. Very, very few people move from overseas directly to Oregon or come from south of the border directly to Oregon. They mostly go to California, Texas, New York, Ellis Island still exists and all that sort of stuff, right? So Miami, right? So but then they still make their way. So Oregon's share of the population that is foreign born is about average, right? They don't move directly to Oregon at first, but they move to California and then they move north like a lot of our neighbors. And so there's definitely a direct impact there. But what really matters for Oregon is the net domestic migration. So people moving from Colorado or Montana or New York or Georgia, whatever it is, mostly Californians, to be honest, right? That's what really matters. And so I think that legal part is very, very important from a macro level perspective at the US level. And if it matters to the workforce and the macro stuff at the US level, that makes it important for us. Even though we don't have those, we don't have border issues in Oregon because we don't border other countries.
All righty. I'm taking a peek. I don't see any other questions in the chat. So Josh, that absolutely fascinating. Thank you so very much. Good education for me, I know. So thank you so much for joining us and for the information and the work that you do for the state and sharing your contact information and your blog and all that good stuff. So those of us that haven't been tracking you can start to track you. So in your honor today, we're going to make a donation to our very own Salem Rotary Foundation. So again, Josh, thank you very much for your important work and for coming and talking with us today. So it was a pleasure. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
So next week, we will have Chamber of Commerce is our program supporting local businesses, and we'll have Kathy Gordon as well as Tom Hoffert, who's one of our newest Rotary members, joining us for the day. So looking forward to that. And let me double check who the program person is for that. That is Shani Starr, per my notes. So appreciate that. It'll be another great program. As we wrap up, I want to thank our guests, Lisa and Matt, for joining us today, as well as everybody. Put your thinking caps on what we're going to do 2/4 Ryan when we meet our goal next week. So I know he's very open to the ideas of celebrating meeting our goal. So with that, we'll close our meeting and appreciate you all very much. Enjoy your day, and we will see you all soon. Bye-bye, everybody.